We missed him last week, but there's a great reason why he wasn't in studio. Reverend Frank Ritchie, good to have you in.
Oh, it's nice to be here. And I was not going to be with you last week because I was going to be in a hut in the bush doing a beautiful spiritual two-night retreat. And it didn't turn out like that. So the reason I ended up not talking to you wasn't because I was in the hut, it's because I could hardly walk.
Okay.
He was holed up in bed, tending to his blisters.
Well, the overarching theme of this first chat is about human tenacity. So walk us through, literally.
Yeah. So there's this wonderful hut that I like to stay at, that I've been staying at since I was a teen. Waitawheta Hut in the Waitawheta Valley in the Kaimai Ranges. It's over the Tauranga side, over the Bay of Plenty side. And I knew I couldn't get to the hut from the way that I would normally walk in. I was planning the walk for Monday. Knew I couldn't get in because the cyclone had taken out one of the swing bridges. They haven't repaired it yet. There'd been lots of rain, so I knew that the river would be impassable. That would have just been a stupid thing to try. So I found another way in. And some people who will know the area, I came in from Lindeman Road, which involves a steep climb up the Kaimai Ranges to start with. You get to the top of the Kaimai Ranges, you link up with a section of the north-south track, the upper Waitawheta track, and then you make your way down into the Waitawheta Valley and you follow the river along to the hut. And I'd done my due diligence. I had looked at reviews because I hadn't walked these tracks before. I looked at the reviews, knew it was going to be hard work, checked out every stream along the way thinking, okay, are any of these going to be impassable? And the reviews I read said if it's flood conditions, this is the way out. I'm like, well, that's the clincher. This is the way that I'm going to go.
Great.
So I left early in the morning. I got into the bush just before 8 a.m. and had packed enough for the 5-hour estimation, the dock estimation, to get to the hut. And I've never taken as long as Doc says to get to anywhere.
That's what every tramper prides themselves on, beating whatever the time says. You're like, I'll do it half an hour quicker than that.
But this time, every marker I hit was the time that Doc said because the track was so rugged, everything was so wet. I expected the water to be flowing down the track because when there's lots of water, that's what happens. I expected it to be wet. I expected it to be muddy. I expected it to be hard work. So I took enough water for the 5-hour trip, enough snacks for the 5-hour trip, and expected that when I got to the hut, I'd be able to put on nice, clean, warm clothes, cook up some food, boil up some water, have a drink, eat some hot noodles, and it would be great. And I got 4 hours, 15 minutes into the walk. I was stuffed, which I expected. And I hit the last stream. The hut was 45 minutes away. Those warm clothes were 45 minutes away. My feet were blistered. I knew they were blistered. My legs were tired from a heavy pack on the most rugged stuff I've ever walked. And I hit a stream that I could not pass. 45 minutes from the hut. It was just after 12 o'clock. And so I looked at all my options. Can I find a way upstream here and maybe get across and make my way back to the track? Can I do the same downstream? And I just could not find a safe place to do it. So I had to turn around. And the mind game of turning around when my body's already feeling spent. I'm not young anymore. My body was already feeling spent. I didn't, in my mind, this will be a twist that we'll talk about next. I didn't, in my mind, have enough water for the way back. And my body was done. So, and I had eaten all my snacks, and I knew I didn't have time to cook anything if I wanted to get out before dark. So I didn't pause. I turned around, swore loudly at the river.
I cursed the river and the sky.
I did. I cursed the river. And I've been praying, Lord, have mercy on my way there as this nice little spiritual exercise. It turned into a plea of desperation for the walk back, and I started the walk back and found my limit and went well beyond it. With about 2.5 hours to go, my legs started cramping up. I was rationing a small amount of water, taking my pack off every now and then to relieve the weight, but never long enough to have a proper break because I needed to get out. I managed to get out. I got in my car. I had enough energy to take my shoes and socks off. I didn't have enough energy to change the rest of my clothes. I got in the car and cried because the mental game, the exhaustion on the way was just full on. But it made...
Well, I was just going to say that I think, because I do a bit of hunting and stuff, so you go into the bush. So I know some of the things that you're talking about. And props to you for not trying to cross the river, first of all, because a lot of people, when you get to that decision where you have to make a hard call that's not what you want and basically give up on what you came to do, it's really hard to do, especially when you're tired and you know what the other decision is even. you weigh up stupid decisions in the bush, and people often make the wrong ones. So well done on actually
Yeah. Thank you.
swallowing your pride and turning around and just saying, I can't do that.
Thank you. I know the area well enough, and I have enough respect for the danger of the space to
Yeah.
not make stupid decisions. So I made my way back. But it just made me think about human tenacity. It was a big, big mind game. There was a point where I was reflecting on, could I survive a night in the bush? And with what I had, I could have, but I knew my body would seize up, and so the walk the next day would be even harder. So it was a mind game of just little by little, just take a few more steps, then breathe, few more steps, then breathe. And I thought my limit was much further back than it was, and I had way more in the tank than I thought I did. And it just made me think about everything that human beings endure. And this was nothing compared to what some humans have endured, and our ability to survive and just keep going. We're in the big scheme of things, this little speck in time and space, not even a little speck, we're micro. Yet God has given us this amazing ability and tenacity to just keep going, no matter what we face, to just keep going. And I know that's not the story for everybody. Life is littered with people who haven't survived or got through. But by and large, as a species, God has given us this amazing ability to take the moment that we've got and make everything of it.
Under that duress and under that fatigue, your body's telling you to stop, but your mind is saying, I need to make the right decision. And often, and you find it even, if you find in sport, when players are under fatigue, they make the wrong decisions. So I back what Bjorn has said, for you to make that right decision. Because 45 minutes out, you would have been able to say, okay, if I just try, put one foot in front of the other, I can make it to this hut.
Oh, totally. And I knew that the rest of the way, as opposed to what I had just tramped, the rest of the way was probably flat because I was tracking with the river by then. And I know that the river runs alongside pretty much the hut. So if I got over the river, I knew I was probably in for the part of the walk that I've been waiting for after enduring everything else. But I assessed it. I knew that the river was higher, that the stream was higher than it would normally be. I could see the boulders that you would probably normally step on. They had fast flowing water over them, so I couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't be slippery. I could see the point where I would need to enter the water. I could see that it was probably a bit too deep and the water flow was way too fast. So I assessed where I would fall if I got pushed.
Wow.
And I did not like the point where I would fall and everything would get wet. So
It's amazing the connection, though, between the physical and like the spiritual or mental as well. And especially, what you talk about your own resilience and finding out where your limits are, and then that they're actually way beyond where you thought they would be. And I think, too, there's a thing you can learn from that in your own life, like what you take away from that as to what you've experienced physically, and finding new depths within yourselves to just keep going and to be able to continue on when things are really difficult, what that will translate to. Like in your own life, I've found this for myself. When times get hard in other ways, not so much physically, but maybe mentally or spiritually, about that you can actually keep going and that you have to just keep pushing on.
yeah. So just some things for people listening in who might attempt this sort of stuff. I know those ranges well. I prepare well. My wife knew exactly where I was going, what tracks I was taking. The only difficulty was she was expecting me out by a certain time on Wednesday, not Monday. So when she got the text, it was a surprise. I'll probably be investing in a personal locator beacon.
I was going to ask you.
I haven't needed one because it's always been the easy tracks. But if I'm going to attempt things like that, a personal locator beacon will be smart. But to anybody listening in, if you are going to go tramping in the New Zealand bush, expect that it's going to be dangerous, that the weather could turn at any time, and prepare accordingly.
And I know you're a man of faith, so I would imagine this wouldn't have tested your faith. It definitely tested your character.
Yeah, it tested my character, not my faith. Because of my childhood, the idea of suffering and pain and struggle and challenge doesn't waver my faith. It's just an intricate part of what it means to be a person of faith. But what's embarrassing about this story, there's a little twist.
Just to recap, okay, for anyone that missed it. So Frank went into the Kaimai Ranges last week, went to go on a long hike to get to a hut for a couple of nights, got almost to the hut about 4 and a bit hours in, and then found out he had to turn around and go back because he couldn't cross a river, and was at the end of himself by the time he made it back to the car.
Yeah, well and truly beyond the end of myself.
Yeah, a broken man
Now,
hobbling home.
We talked about how I had enough water to get to the hut. And so
Yeah.
there was a small amount of water I was rationing on the way
Oh,
back,
no.
taking little bits of water when I was cramping and
You
taking my
didn't
pack
fill
off.
up at the stream? Or was it just a dirty...
I don't trust the streams anymore. I did when I was young. I don't trust them anymore. But I have a life straw bottle. And a life straw bottle... I had it with me. A life straw
Well, I
bottle
don't
is
know.
a filter
Yeah.
made for communities where they don't have access to clean water. So you can
Okay.
fill up from anywhere.
Okay.
You can drink through the bottle and the water's going to be fine. I had that bottle with me. I'd filled it up. It was the first one I drank. And in my brain, when I got to the hut, that was the first thing I was going to fill up so I could have a drink. On easier walks, I have filled that bottle up in streams and drunk water along walks so that I didn't have to carry a lot of water. In my brain, that bottle was going to get filled up at the hut so that I could have a quick drink. And in my brain, when I turned around, in my brain, I had a little bit of water left. So my solution to getting back was rationing that water every time I felt a little bit of cramp. I would have a bit of a sip of water. That bottle was with me the whole way. There were plenty of streams that I could have filled up from. When I got home, I weighed 2 kg less than when I started the day. That was just fluid loss. I could have been drinking water the whole way. But my brain had tunneled in on what I was using that bottle for and what the solution was to get back home. I'm a chess player. Now, this is really interesting because in chess that's called tunneling, where you see a move that you could make and you don't think beyond that move. And when you try to think beyond that move, you cannot get beyond it. Your brain sticks on that and it can't see any other solution. So whilst in hindsight, I had a very obvious solution to my water problem, and I thought about it on the drive home and kicked myself. My brain had tunneled in on this one thing. But we do that all the time in life. So I've been thinking since, how do I stop that from happening? And it involves calming down. It involves slowing down. It involves thinking about the different facets of the problem and giving yourself time in the middle of the stress, because it was a highly stressful situation, to think through other possibilities. And we get there by building the muscle of slowing down and calming ourselves and thinking things through. That's why prayer, and not just prayer where we're mouthing things to God, but prayer where we slow down, and not just in a set time of the day, but throughout the day, where we slow down, we breathe, we take notice, and we listen. We're building those muscles that we need so when we're in those stressful situations, good solutions reveal themselves and hopefully allows the Spirit to whisper some things in that we might need to hear.
It's an interesting phenomenon, right? Tunneling.
It is.
Didn't know I had a name for it. But that's true, right? Like we can all get locked in on a certain thing or outcome maybe that we're determined or fixated on and can't see any other possibility or way of rethinking that when you're completely focused and locked on a certain thing.
Well, you're a rational man, right? And when you're under duress and under stress, that all goes out the window. So I think the thing that caught my attention there is breathe. Breathe. First of all, stop and breathe, because just breathing is all out of whack, right?
Yeah.
Because
And
you're
it still
stressed.
would have been really hard, but that one issue of dehydration could have been eliminated.
Well, it's good to have you in studio, buddy.
Thank you.
and alive. Well, I was just saying off air that, mate, I don't know if you're going to be visiting any schools anytime soon to speak, but you've got a great story to share with them about human tenacity, that's for sure. Reverend Frank Ritchie, don't go walking or hiking between now and next Wednesday, okay? So we can see you back in studio next Wednesday.